नमस्कार आपण मानक समस्त को यही वीडियो बहुत बहुत स्वागत। आज ही वीडियो में आप सहित +3 थर्ड सेमिस्टर पॉलिटिकल साइंस ऑनर्स कोर पेपर 5 रो हिस्टोरिकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ मॉडर्न गवर्नमेंट यूनिट 2 रो किछि 1 मार्क्स क्वेश्चन आंसर आपन सह कोन शेयर करबी आ वीडियो आगो को कहबी जे आपण माने एहर पीडीएफ बा नोट्स टी को किपरि भाबे पाई परबे। तो चलंतु स्टार्ट करबा। The term des means an honor of capital. The term capitalist means an honor of a capital. The term capitalist appears earlier than the term capitalism. Capitalist dates back to the this century. Capitalist dates back to the mid 17th century. Capitalist is derived from capital, which evolved from this a late Latin word based on output, meaning head capital. The capital is derived from capital, which evolved from capital, a late Latin word based on capital, meaning head. Capital emerged in the this century in the sense of referring to funds, stocks of merchandise, sum of money, or money carrying interest 12 to 13. By 1283, capital was used to in the sense of the days of trading frame na capital's assets of a trading frame. The entire use of the term capitalism in its modern sense has been attributed to this in 1850, Louis Blanche in 1815. Today in common newspaper language, the word capitalist states is frequently used to denote many days centuries western developed countries. Capitalism is social system based on the principle of this rights individual rights. So capitalism is a social system based on the principle of individual rights. Politically, capitalism is the system of this laissez-faire means freedom. Politically, capitalism is the system of laissez-faire means freedom. Economically, when such freedom is applied to the sphere of production, its result is the free market. Economically, when such freedom is applied, when applied to the sphere of production sphere, its result is the free market. The economic doctrine prevailing from 16th to 18th centuries in commonly called mercantilism. The economic doctrine prevailing from the 16th to the 18th century is commonly called mercantilism. Most scholars consider the era of merchant capitalism and mercantilism as the origin of modern capitalism. These economies are prevalent in US, UK, Canada, New Zealand, Ireland. Now, liberal market economics are prevalent in USA, UK, Canada, New Zealand, Ireland. These economic are prevalent in Germany, Japan, Sweden, Australia. Now, coordinate market or CME are prevalent in Germany, Japan, Sweden, Australia. The starting point of this philosophy is capitalism. The starting point of Marxian philosophy is capitalism. In fact, this is byproduct of industrial revolution. In fact, capitalism is the byproduct of industrial revolution. The Black Death is given an important reason for the decline of this feudalism. The Black Death is given as an important reason for the decline of feudalism. One of the important characteristics of modern capitalism is this wage labor. Wage labor is one of the important characteristics of modern capitalism. The days capitalism was the stage in 18th and early 19th century when industrial capitalism made it breakout. Anarchy capitalism was the stage in 18th and early 19th century when industrial capitalist made it breakthrough. The second stage of capitalism is called by future the days capitalism, the managed capitalism. James Fletcher calls the period after 1970s as a days capitalism, the remarketized capitalism. Anke Hochbeld in his book Days traces the expansion of capitalism outside Europe. Anke Hochbeld in his book Globalization in Post-Colonial World traces the expansion of capitalism outside Europe. This is described as the modern of capitalism and adoption of the social market model that exist in continental Western Europe today. Now, Rhine capitalism is described as the modern model of capitalism and adaptation of the social market model that exists in continental Western Europe today. This is more extensive from a free market economy. Now, laissez-faire is more extensive from of a free market economy. The this stands from increasing scope and intensity of cooperation among nations. Now, internationalism stands from increasing scope and intensity of cooperation among nations. This refers to a free and integrated world system. Globalization refers to a free and integrated world system. MFN stands for what? MFN stands for most favored nation. Most favored nations. This globalization refers to trans-country flow of capital, finance, or money. Economic globalization refers to trans-country flow of capital, finance, or money. This globalization refers to trans-country flow of goods or products. Production globalization refers to trans-country flow of goods or products. Economic flow of capital or finance or money. Production flow of goods and products. This globalization refers to trans-border flow, knowledge, ideas, information, knowledge, idea, information. So, information globalization refers to trans-border flow of knowledge, ideas, and information. Now we discuss questions on one words answers. The second phase of globalization started from which year? 1950, 1945. The second phase of globalization culminated in which year? 1973. The first phase of globalization started from which year? 1870. First 1870, second 1945. First phase of globalization ended which year? 1913. Start 1870 and 1913. The first phase of globalization started from 1870 and ended 1913 with outbreak of which war? The First World War. In which phase of globalization the global institutions were non-existent? The first phase of globalization the global institutions were non-existent. The first phase of globalization started from which year and still in progress? 1974. The 1974, the third phase of globalization started from 1974 year and it still in progress. Which phase is also known as the current phase of globalization? The third phase of which is also known as the current phase of globalization. In which phase the labor mobility is low and mobility of the capital is high? The third phase labor mobility is low and the mobility of the capital is high. Who view globalization as a legitimate and irreversible historical process? Hyper globalization as a legitimate and irreversible historical process. Who emphasize the fact that the national economics are still relevant and the process should be called internationalism. The skeptics emphasize the fact that national economics are still relevant and the process should be called internationalisms. Who see fundamental change in society but at the same time take a multi-dimensional view of the picture. Transformationalists who see the fundamental change in society but at the same time take a multi-dimensional view of the picture. Who considers globalization as a phenomenon shaped by forces of modern capitalism, politics, military power, and industrialism. Anthony Giddens considers globalization as a phenomenon shaped by forces of modern capitalism, politics, military power, and industrialism. According to Oxford English Dictionary (OED), the term capitalism first appeared in English in which year? 1854 in year the term capitalism first appeared in the English. Who assume that a capitalism in economic or social system in which the means of production are owned privately and distribution happens through market mechanism. The liberal economists assume that capitalism is an economic or social system in which the means of production are owned privately and distribution happens through the market mechanism. Who see capitalism as an ideology of the ruling bourgeois class who wants the means of production. Marx sees capitalism as an ideology of the ruling bourgeois class who wants the means of production. Who argued that the hallmark of capitalism is the establishment of a generalized market for what he called the fictitious commodities. Carl Polanyi argued that the hallmark of capitalism is the establishment of a generalized market for what he called fictitious commodities. Land, labor, and money are called what commodities? Na fictitious commodities. Who first used the phrase capitalism in 1854? Makepeace Thackeray. William Makepeace Thackeray first used the phrase capitalism in 1854, in which your novel William Makepeace Thackeray described capitalism as having ownership of capital and not a system of production. The new comes novel William Makepeace Thackeray described capitalism as having ownership of capital and not as a system of production. Merchant capitalism grew significantly by 16th century in which continent? Europe continent. Who argues that merchant capitalism, particularly in the shape of East India Company, developed strongly in the 17th century. James Fletcher argued that the merchant capitalism, particularly in the shape of East India Company, developed strongly in 17th century, which war between France and England in 14th and 15th century strengthens the power of monarchs and weakened from the feudal lords. The 100 years between France and England in 14th and 15th century strengthened the power of monarchs and weakened the feudal lords. Which country witnessed the growth of simple commodity exchange and production? The 16th century England witnessed the growth of simple commodity exchange and production. Which stage of capitalism wrongly began in the second half of the 19th century and lasted till 1970s? The second stage of capitalism wrongly began in the second half of the 19th century and last till 1970s. Which period is marked by rise of neoliberal beliefs in freedom of individual and free operation of market forces in after 1970s? After 1970s period marked by the rise new liberals beliefs in freedom of individual and free operation of market process. Who distinguishes four periods of European expansion? Hochbeld distinguishes four periods of European expansions. The characteristic feature of which phase is that name of trading reactions. The European merchants transform the economic surplus for Africa, Asia, South America or Europe. Now mercantile phase. The mercantile phase characteristics future of a phase is that in the name of trading relations the European merchants transferred the economic surplus from Africa, Asia, South America to Europe. Which period after the political independence the newly independent countries adopt a development model which result in transfer of economic surplus through developmentalism and technological and neo-colonial? Which period the transfer of the economic surplus occurred through debt patronage place to do service in repayment to of a debt? 1970 post imperialism. Who said capital is dead labor which vampire like lives only sucking living labor and leaves the more labor is sucks? Karl Marx said. Who is projected as a throne in the foot of capitalism? Fidel Castro is projected as a throne in the foot of capitalism. In his book Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism 1917, who argues that imperialism is a result of capitalist search for greater portfolio profits outside their own country? Now Vladimir Lenin in his book Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism 1917, who argues means Vladimir Lenin argues that imperialism is a result of the capitalist research for greater profits outside their own country. Who said but every acquisition that is disproportionate to the labor spent on his dishonest? Leo Tolstoy said but every acquisition that is disproportionate to the labor spent on it is dishonest. Who said globalization is the both active process of cooperative expansion across borders and a structure of cross-border facilities and economic linkage that has been steadily growing and changing? Edward S. Herman said. Who said globalization is the processes whereby social relations acquire relatively distance, less and broadless qualities. Bellis and Smith said globalization is the process whereby social relations acquire relatively distanceless and borderless qualities. Who propounded the idea of invisible hand? Adam Smith propounded the idea of invisible hand. So we discuss. If you get the notes or PDF, then you join our Telegram group, link in the description. So thank you to all of you watching this video.